Hey everybody, TacticAngel back on the PlayStation 5 to run down the history of an Italian heavy cruiser, Gorizia, which appears in World Warships Legends as a Tier 6 premium ship. My review of Gorizia in-game should follow shortly, and once it is made available, you should see a link to it in the description. The Gorizia was the third of 4 ships in the Zara class of heavy cruisers built for the Italian Royal Navy. Laid down in March 1930, she was launched in December that same year and commissioned into service in December 1931. The ship's model that we're looking at in-game is fairly good at representing what the ship would have looked like around the time she was commissioned in 1931. There are 2 things here that are worth noting about her appearance though. First, there are no torpedoes on this boat, and that is accurate to the Zara class cruisers as they were built. Originally, the Zara design did include torpedoes, but in an attempt to try to keep the Zara class within the Washington Treaty limits, they were excluded from the final design, not just on the Gorizia, but on all Zara class ships. Even with these revisions, the Zara class cruisers all commissioned into service around 1,500 tons over the weight limit, but they still got an A for effort. Second, though the Gorizia is wearing a version of a Claudus camouflage pattern that was common for Italian cruisers, this is more or less a pattern she would adopt in 1942. Commissioned during peacetime, the Gorizia would have worn no camouflage, in part so she could show off those beautiful Italian lines. Indeed, after her shakedown, her first duties were naval exercises in honor of the King of Italy, Victor Emmanuel III, followed by a Navy review for the Prime Minister and future Duce of Italy, Benito Mussolini. From there, she escorted the king to the Horn of Africa, which at that point was mostly an extension of the Italian Empire. Her service prior to World War II was not entirely peaceful, though, as Italy saw political advantage in assisting the nationalists in Spain's Civil War in 1936, alongside Germany. In July 1936, she was sent to help evacuate Italian citizens from Gijón and then sail to Kiel to show the beauty and prowess of the Italian Navy at the Olympics. Sadly for Gorizia, she would suffer a fire on her way back to Italy and have to put in at Morocco for repairs. Rounding out her duties prior to the war, she participated in several more naval reviews for various fascist leaders of Spain and Germany. And she at least threatened combat against a small fleet of Spanish Republicans, but the Spanish ships were undeterred, and nothing more really came of the matter. When World War II started, Gorizia was based out of Taranto, and within 2 days of the start of the war, she was already tangling with some unknown submarine off the coast of Crete, presumably a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing. Later in 1940, she was present at the Battle of Calabria. Here she would dodge air attacks from HMS Eagle's flight group and attempt to engage HMS Warspite without any luck. The Italian and British fleets traded damage, with the Giulio Cesare having the most significant damage, and eventually that forced the Italian fleet to retire. Still, Italy was able to protect its cargo ships, so it was something of a strategic success, if not an actual victory. She would come under attack next in November, while at Taranto, when the British attacked the port. She was able to claim 1 aerial kill and received no damage in return. Gorizia played a slightly more important role at the Battle of Cape Spartivento, as her spotter plane was what helped Campione guide his fleet to engage the Royal Navy. The Gorizia herself shot down a British aircraft during the battle, and though the Italian cruisers this time did display better accuracy, scoring hits on the British cruiser Berwick, ultimately this was a bit of a disappointment for the Regia Marina, since it was a missed opportunity to score a win against outnumbered British forces. During the first half of 1941, Gorizia spent her time in La Spezia for maintenance. Up to this point, it was common for 3 of the 4 Zara-class ships to operate together, with the 4th rotating out for repairs and upgrades. It was just coincidence that Gorizia was in reserve in March 1941 and was therefore not present at the Battle of Cape Matapan, where her 3 sister ships, Zara, Fiume, and Pola, all met a fairly quick and violent end in the nighttime engagement against Cunningham's battleships and the Royal Navy destroyers that followed them. Instead, she transferred from here to Messina, where she joined 2 warships of the Trento class for escort duties between Italy and Axis-controlled North Africa. She twice sortied against convoys headed to Malta, though neither time engaged. Her only significant action in 1941 was at the First Battle of Sirte, which would mark the 3rd stalemate in which she participated. A curiosity here being that the battle had exactly 1 man killed in action, and that man was believed to have been killed by a near miss fired by Gorizia at the destroyer HMS Kipling. 3 months later, and change, she was not quite as lucky at the Second Battle of Sirte. Though some sources claim that Gorizia struck and at least momentarily crippled HMS Kingston, other sources claim that she actually didn't hit anything at all. One thing is clear though, Gorizia came under heavy attack from air and submarine units and incurred moderate damage. Returning to port, the cruiser underwent repairs, but there was really no coming back into the war. She would be harried by multiple airstrikes and the increasing Royal Navy control of the Middle Sea throughout the remainder of 1942. Though she was lucky to survive multiple aerial attacks that year, her luck ran out on April 10, 1943, when a massive attack by U.S. Army Air Force heavy bombers struck La Maddalena. Gorizia was struck with 3 bombs and incurred more damage from near misses. With 4 boilers damaged and 2 engines out, she limped to La Spezia for more significant repairs. She was there in September 1943 when the Italians agreed to an armistice. Wanting to continue the war in the Mediterranean, though, the Kriegsmarine wanted to take possession of the Gorizia. Though it is somewhat doubtful that they would have been able to get her operational, which is actually the exact reason why she wasn't scuttled by her own commander, this was a chance the Allies were not willing to take. So on the evening of June 21st, 1944, British and Italian frogmen infiltrated the harbor in manned torpedoes to sink both cruisers Bolzano and Gorizia. Bolzano did sink to the bottom of the harbor, and Gorizia was damaged, but technically still afloat at the end of the war. But the attack had left her in a state where she was obviously going to be no use to anyone during the remainder of the conflict. While listing to port, many of her weapons were removed for use elsewhere, and following World War II, the Italian Navy determined it would have no use for the ship, so she was broken up for scrap in 1947. And that pretty much finishes off the history of the Gorizia. Once again, please check out my review once that is available below. I hope you've all enjoyed this little history lesson, and as always, I hope to see you on the next one.